I'll start with you, Congressman Barton, just because I think we got to. Maybe you can tell us whether Obamacare now. Can we put that aside and try and do some budget deal with sequester or with COLA or cost of living or something? Would that be enough to maybe not a clean CR, clean debt ceiling, but something where Boehner and even some of his other guys would be satisfied? Would that be okay? Is Obamacare off the table now?
I don't think Obamacare is off the table. It's the largest entitlement expansion in the time that I've been in the Congress. We do have the debt ceiling that, according to the President, is coming up in mid-October. Republicans in the House can multitask. I would assume the Democrats can, too. We can handle them simultaneously, or we can handle them independently.
Wait a second. Are you saying you would actually take us over the debt ceiling and say, forget it, if Obamacare isn't on the negotiation block?
I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is this debate over the Affordable Care Act is not just another debate. It's a fundamental change in the way Americans receive their medical care.
But we can't get anywhere with it.
Well, then maybe you and I ought to go have a cup of coffee and see if we can work it out.
Congressman, just on the debt ceiling real quick, do you want to say right now, one way or the other, whether you're willing to just let it go, meaning you're not going to make this a debating point at all?
No. On the debt ceiling, I think, in my mind, is a bigger issue than Obamacare. I want a real debt ceiling with real reforms in entitlement and a way to get the budget balanced in the next 5 years.
And so you're willing to play with that?
I'm not sure what you mean by willing to play with it. But
what I'm suggesting is that come September 17th, you're prepared to go over if you don't get what you want on entitlements and some of these other issues.
I don't know what go over means. I'm not going to vote for a debt the so-called clean debt ceiling where we just give the president a blank check. I will not vote for that.
Okay. Well, that's assuming that the president's not going to debate on this, then you got a problem, right?
I think the president made it really clear he's not going to be extorted on this type of thing, and it'll pass probably without the congressman's vote. I wanted to ask the congressman.
It won't pass.
I wanted to ask the congressman how his staff have been weathering the shutdown. Have they been furloughed? How are they putting up with not getting paid?
My personal staff?
Your personal staff, other staff in Congress, federal workers?
Well, each congressman is an independent agent, so each congressman decides which of their staff stay and which of them are furloughed. In my case, I have one person in each of my 2 district offices down in Texas. The rest are at home. And up here, I think I have 3 people plus 2 interns that are voluntary anyway.
And those who are not getting paid, how are they handling this situation?
Well, they seem to be in good spirits. They can't do work from home, and they don't have their BlackBerries or their computers, but they can call in and check on various issues that they're tracking. And I think they understand that this is a serious situation, and for the short term, some sacrifices have to be made.
Congressman Schiff, at this point, I guess we all are sort of thinking about that comment that, I don't know, it was an anonymous that said, we don't care how long this takes, we're winning. I mean, that's not the right attitude for even Democrats to have, or the president, right? I mean,
that's a stupid attitude, and no wonder they're anonymous. That is not defensible at all. We're all losers in this government shutdown, the American people, the economy. It's been an unmitigated and man-made disaster, and if we go over the next cliff and allow a default on our debt obligations, it'll be an even bigger disaster. So there's no winners here. But I do agree with the president that, if he's going to negotiate, the kind of my way, or we shut it down, we burn the house down, this time over either the debt ceiling or over the shutdown we're incurring right now, he's just going to invite this kind of extortion every time there's a deadline. The Affordable Care Act was voted on and passed, was upheld by the Supreme Court. We had an election, a presidential election over it. The other side lost. It's time to let it go, give it a chance to succeed, give it a chance to be improved. It's more than fair to ask the president to negotiate improvements to the Affordable Care Act, but not with the threat of shutting down the government or defaulting on our debt. It's just no way to do business and can't be allowed to proceed that way. not only for this president, but for future presidents.
Well, then you're not willing. Okay, so then we're where we are. You saw Boehner. You saw what was said about it. So you say the president shouldn't do anything at this point.
Well, I think I think there's a way forward here, and the Republicans seem to be in search of a prize of some kind. They've moved some. Joe hasn't, but others have moved away from Obamacare to more budgetary decisions. I think there's a face-saving way out of this for the GOP.
Is there anyone other than the president that could make the move to get this done? And presidents in the past, I mean, president.
Well,
that's what they do,
I'll make a deal. I'll make a deal with the president and the Democrats. Let's make Obamacare voluntary. Year. If it's as good as the Democrats say it is, the American people will accept it. And if it's as bad as the Republicans like me say it is, they'll reject it, and we can come back in a year and fix what needs to be fixed. But make it voluntary and let the people choose.
Of course, that doesn't work at all, because if you
why doesn't it work?
Well, I'll tell you why it doesn't work. It doesn't work because if you let people choose to have insurance or not, but you require the insurance companies to cover those with pre-existing conditions, then people will only opt into insurance when they get sick, and of course that won't work at all. But
all I know is all my friends on the Democrat side have been saying how great it is.
Doesn't want it to work.
Congressman, I just want to ask a question.
Which congressman?
The one from Texas.
Yes, sir.
Barton. Yes, no, I know. The question I have for you is this. Becky had said in the last hour, we're talking about if you go over the debt ceiling, what the cost is. And the cost could be $120 billion annually if the interest rate goes.
That's if the interest rate goes up, although Barry has said
which it could.
In the past times.
Are you willing to risk that?
I don't know.
And it sounds like you might be.
Well, we have, in my household budget, some bills that have to be paid and some bills that we can defer or only pay partially. I think paying interest on the debt has to be paid. I think paying Social Security payments have to be paid. But I don't think paying the Secretary of Energy's travel expenses have to be paid 100 cents on the dollar. So we've got more than enough cash flow to pay interest on the public debt as it comes due. And the House Republicans have passed a prioritization bill to the Senate that would prioritize what was paid first. This talk about default by the U.S. Treasury is nonsense. The president can be smart or the president can be stupid. And I would assume that as smart as President Obama is, when push comes to shove, he'll be smart. So we are not going to default on the public debt. But that doesn't mean that we have to pay every bill the day it comes in 100 cents on the dollar.
You think Jack Lew is lying when he says that he can't prioritize?
I'm not going to say anybody is lying. I'm saying he's playing politics when he says that.
Congressman Schiff, just to go back to affordable care for a minute, I get the negative selection bias point that you're trying to make. What if you took the penalty for the individual mandate and said nobody making less than, say, $100,000 has to pay it for the first year in exchange for restructuring sequestration cuts? So in essence, you've created a pseudo fiscal stimulus plan where you're not cutting spending in exchange for just the low-end person doesn't have to pay that fine for a year to match up with the employer mandate. You think that's a non-starter as well?
I think it probably is a non-starter because many economists will tell you that the penalties for not buying insurance in the early years are too low as they are, that people will make an economic decision. They're better off not just paying the penalty, and then if they get ill, they can opt in. So, I think economists would reject that argument and say it makes the program even less workable. But the point I'd like to make is the president has said all along, and I think Democrats in Congress feel the same way, this is not going to be a perfect process. It's not a perfect reform. It's going to need improvements and tweaks as we go along. And we're more than willing to entertain those. And I think there ought to be some way that we can resolve this by saying, all right, let's establish a process where we'll bring some of these reforms to a vote. But we're not about to guarantee the other side that they're going to win those votes because, frankly, they haven't been winning them. And you can't simply use the lever of a shutdown or the lever of a default. And, frankly, I think it's just irresponsible to take us over that cliff and say, well, we'll see how it works out on the other side. But, yeah, we'll sit down at the table and we'll negotiate a process where we can get votes on these things. And then, the Congress will do its will. That may be one way out of this impasse. But to take gamble, to roll the dice and say, well, the Secretary can prioritize when he says he can't, or that the international markets are going to view this as anything other than the most severe dysfunction and depreciate U.S., I think is a terrible risk to take.
All right, gentlemen. So we got somewhere, sort of, I think. Appreciate it, Congressman Adam Schiff and Congressman Joe Barton.